Hey, what's up? It's Sifu Kuttel, and in this video, we're going to be doing some snake-style defensive techniques. I use the term defensive techniques because this is going to encompass a number of blocks, bridges, deflections, parries, and traps or grabs. So I didn't want to just stick with one thing in particular while explaining this. I wanted to exhibit some of the techniques that are more prominent in the snake form, in the snake style within Choi Li Fut. And with that said, when it comes to things like blocking techniques, trapping techniques, and parrying techniques, there is a vast number of them, and we're not going to cover all of them in this video because they are in the base system of Choi Li Fut, and it's without any modifications. So you'll see a lot of times open hand blocks. This can match that snake style. Okay, I will kind of show some of the ones that show up a little bit more in the snake form. But for the most part, we're going to be looking at things that require a little bit of modification or match conceptually more with the snake style tactics and movements. Now, when it comes to the context of combat, you need to understand that blocks are not something that you want to go into a sparring match or a fight thinking that that's the first thing you're going to do, and that's what you're waiting for, is for them to move first so that you can block and then do some kind of a countering technique. Blocks should always be at the ready. This is, you don't decide when you're going to block. Your opponent makes that decision, and a block is a way to ensure that you're not going to take the brunt of that strike. You should always be on a back and forth, ready to attack, ready to defend, preparedness level, I would say, rather than just thinking only in terms of defensive. I'm only going to block, I'm only going to block. Because if you go in with that mindset, you're trying to aim for moving targets that are flying at you, and that's, a bunch of different moving targets. And there's no consequence for those moving targets. So the opponent can just throw combinations at you, and you're just going to sit there and try to keep adapting and controlling and moving and blocking those combinations, but you're giving them no reason to stop. So you need to also have in your mind, when your opponent is open, either counterattack or just move in and strike if they're not moving. So it's never black and white like that. It's never an on-off switch. There's always chances of being in that in between. So preparedness is key. You need to have your reaction speed ready so that you can block if you need to. You can redirect if you need to. You can counter from there. You know what to do after that. And that's something we're going to get into a little bit later, but it's also important to have a game plan for what to do after. It doesn't have to be specific, but you need to be prepared to move, because a block by itself, it's just a quick step back to the reset button where you have no advantage. Once you make that block, once you make that parry or redirect, once you catch or trap, you have an opportunity. You have some advantage on the counter. So be prepared for that. When it comes to the context of self-defense, you don't have the time to feel somebody out. This fight was just decided by your attacker. So you have to get into the mindset for that. You have to be prepared for anything. You don't know what their skill level is going to be. You don't know what their ability to handle pain is going to be either. You may have somebody that can just power through strikes that you're hitting them with. So you can't try to think about, fancy combinations or anything like that, or trying to do a block and then a counter. You just have to be in the mode for self-protection. So if you're reactionary, you get your hands up to at least buy yourself some time to get into the mindset of combat, then that's important as well. Okay, but it shouldn't be something where you're going to try to toy with them to set up a nice, cool looking counter. Self-defense is a lot faster. Okay, so with that said, let's move on to our blocks and our defensive techniques. Our first technique is one of the stronger blocks when it comes to Choi Li Fut. We're going to be using a chu now, and in this case we're going to be doing a modification, making the snake head and having our open mouth snake to be able to do this block. So it's an outward block with the palm facing outward as well. We're not turning the hand around. So we have the open mouth pointing towards our opponent, Anytime you're going to do this kind of block, you want to make sure that you go from shoulder to shoulder, and we keep our wrist at about forehead level. Your blocking surface is going to be between your wrist and your elbow, and ideally it's going to go along this bone right here. If you get a last second snap into it, you might be able to really dig in on your opponent and give you an advantage, especially if they're coming in with a strike. You can attack their arm back with that block. You might be able to chop into it. Now, this is a good block for either inside or outside of the opponent's guard. So in training, this is one of those ones where you want to practice it a lot. It can be one of those reactionary blocks where your hand comes up and just at the ready. And as always, be prepared to attack right out of it. You can move with that front hand or you can go in with the backhand. Similar to our first technique, our second technique is going to use the open mouth snake, and it's going to have a similar motion. However, we're not connecting with the forearm, and in this case, we're going to be grabbing with our hand to clear and to pull our opponent away. Now, when it comes to grabbing techniques, this is something where your opponent might have a stiff guard or they have it out and they're indecisive. You don't want to try to grab a punch. You're using this when the arm is already extended. So if they have a long guard, or if you find yourself up in a clinch position, or you're trying to grab or they're trying to wrestle at you, you can pull their hand out of the way. It is an outward pull for you, and this one is best done from the outside. So you end up crossing your opponent's body. You can hold on to that hand and attack with the other. You can kick them, or you can quickly let go and attack with that same side hand once you kind of pull them off balance. So you have an opportunity to either stay controlling the arm or throw it out of the way while you move in to the opening that you've created. Now, if our opponent is not going to punch, we have two snaky options. Our first option is going to be what's called a lao kyu, or a scooping bridge. So I'm going to be bringing my hand and scooping inward to catch underneath a kick. Now, this works best for straight line kicks like front kicks and side kicks. If I'm going to cross right here and catch, I want to step back slightly, get my body offline, and this is something to, even if they make contact, I can follow up by catching. Underneath the hand is fine, underneath the elbow is stronger if you can get the heel underneath there, and you can really control the leg from there. You can also do an outward scoop, and you'll see I like to show this one by leading with the fingertips. If you're wearing gloves, you can scoop outward just like this as well. This works just as well as this, and you don't want to go in fingertips first. Obviously, you don't want to be hitting the legs. So as you're doing these, think of using the forearm. So catch at the elbow, scoop underneath at the forearm itself, and that'll allow you an opening for a counterattack, or you can take that leg and sweep them. Pun kyu translates to coiling bridge, and this is one of the signature techniques in Choi Li Fut. This is our classic parry. Now, you usually see this as the full circle, and I have explained this in some other videos, but just as a reminder, it doesn't have to be the full circle. So anytime you see this big movement, this is the big training movement, and it gives you an availability of like 3 different parrying techniques. You can have a push to the side, you can have a push down, or you can have the full control. Okay, so you have some options there. Now, typically, when the snake style, we have the arms extended, like when we do in our warm-ups, and there's a lot of flexion here. But really, it's just going to be that quick drop and pull. So this is something similar that you'll see in when we're doing stand-up fighting. You just slap down. Now, of course, you want to be able to move with that too, so you get your head out of the way if that's what they're targeting. But we can also use this as a point of control. So good rule of thumb for this one is same side, straight across. So if I'm going to be reaching out with my left hand, you want to be using your right hand to swat down. Okay, so same side here. If the other hand is punching, you don't want to try to go across. This is going to take too long and it leaves you open and available. Only if you have the right timing for that and you know for sure that other hand is not going to be a problem for you should you be able to reach across and throw your next technique. But you really like textbook, basic level, straight across with those ones. Now, of course, this can work for a quick swat to the side. So again, if they're punching with this side, you just swat it to the side. That counts as the same thing. And if they're punching low, this can be used as a cover. But again, typically we're doing this with our long snake hands, but it's the exact same technique. And the nice thing is, once you block, you can either have a quick counter with the opposite side, or you can counter with the same side. We're going to return to our outward block, but we're going to do it this time with the palm facing inward. This is a mirror hand block or a Yeon-kyu, or just your regular outward block. We typically see this in snake style because from here we'll do this with the kick, like the bridging and kicking technique, or we move up into another suppressed, or like check their guard and then move in and strike to the throat with the palm up. So this can be a setup for a palm up hand, palm strike, finger jab, or it can just be an opening to strike in with the other hand. Now when you're doing this outward block, I highly suggest that you do it from the outside. So if they have their right or their left hand up, you're going to take that and move it across right here. Okay, so I want to close my opponent off to counter this one. Now your starting position is key here. If your hand is already up and you have to loop it around and block, you're going to find that that takes way too long. So typically, if your opponent is already on the outside, you can use this to come straight across, or if your hand is low, you can throw the hand up and out to do this block, and then you can follow up with whatever counter you're going to use. For our final technique, we're going to be doing chi-kyu, or a sticky bridge, which is a double hand slap downward. Now this requires a very specific context, so you're not going to just try to do this out of nowhere, and this is something that can be done against hand techniques and hand strikes as well as some kicks. When it comes to kicks, this is more for a forward piercing kick, so a side kick or a front kick, and this is something that you would use to deflect with both of the palms. Now, I'm not going to suggest that you do this for every single kick. This is not your only way to block a kick. And the reason is, if somebody's throwing a kick and they swing upward rather than just piercing inward, you're going to go force against force. Your hands are not as strong as their shin, and you're going to be feeling it. The second thing is, you don't want to get into the habit of always dropping your hands down. So if you're bringing your hands down to slap every single kick, your opponent's going to be able to quickly read that and go in over the top with their hands. Both of your hands are out of the way. It's a complete opening. Okay, so use it sparingly against kicks, but it can be effective. Like I said, if they're piercing straight forward. Now, for the hands, this one is much more practical. This should be done when your opponent is just holding their guard up. So whether you're finding yourself kind of in a close area, there's not a lot of power in the punches, you're kind of almost in a clinch, or if somebody's going to try to grab or be handsy, or they're just not using their hands and they're trying to be a reactive fighter, you can use this to pull both of their hands down quickly, clear the guard, and then counterattack. And this can be done even in gloves. You pull down and then you can throw a front hand punch right out of that, or even a 1-2. You could go straight in, but we're doing a quick pull. If your opponent is tense, they'll actually pull into it and drop the head, which is quite nice. So that's what we're looking for. Again, very specific context. I wouldn't use this defensively against a punch. It's just when you find yourself in a position that they're trying to reach out, or they're moving around, it's just an awkward one, throw their hands out of the way and then move in for the attack. All right, so there you have it. There's a handful of defensive techniques that are seen quite often in the snake form and snake techniques and drills in the style of Choi Li Fut Kung Fu. If you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out my website, as well as check out all the other videos in my playlist. We've gotten to a point where there's quite a bit to work on, so be sure to review that and look forward to see what's coming up next. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next.